91.
Yeah, right.
Live from the den of inebriation here.
As Noah Buchanan named it.
It's Chris Dora, a good friend of ours from
Yes.
Decrepit, Kurnugia. I don't think I've ever been in this basement sober. So I'm happy to be here sober, kind of.
I've never
when
you guys are here, I'm usually not. And I still sort of am. It's only my second.
Good buddy. Great. It's going to be a 91 heavy death metal episode. We got a lot of death metal to cover. We have an OG, great classic Cleveland dude, one of my best friends, great guy, awesome bands. A lot of breadth of knowledge. We're going to be covering a lot of stuff from metal, mostly death metal, but a lot of extreme stuff, some other stuff too.
I figured with Chris here, then with you, I'll probably do more of the hard rock stuff this time.
That's cool too. I like to talk about that stuff.
There's when I mention my Bloody Valentine, I want two people to make fun of me. So that's gonna be, I can get ganged up on more than it usually
I like
is.
shoegaze stuff, but I knew that there's a bunch that came out like Slow Dive and stuff, but I didn't include any of that.
I'm gonna get right into it, man. It's a big year. Like, Chris was heavy into this scene in 91. This is a huge death metal. This is the biggest year, I think, for death. I think we could say this is the best year for death metal,
it was
maybe
one
ever.
Of them. 89, 90, 91 were the three probably best years of my life for that music.
Because you were what, 17? You were what?
I was 17 in 91, yeah, so I was a junior in high school. But, like, we were already into, my group of friends were already into thrash. We were into all the European stuff, Creator, Destruction.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you name it. Just name the band. We were into it. And we were always looking for the next craziest thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then, you get, you already had Death and Obituary already before 91.
Yeah.
Now 91, now their second records are out. All these bands. Then you got your first bands coming out with records,
Yeah.
Malevolent Creation.
Because Death as Human by this time. And you guys were
right, that was old at that point.
Oh, at that point.
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I may as well start off like my favorite band, Dismember. My favorite death metal band of all time puts out Like an Overflowing Stream. To me, that's my favorite death metal band of all time. And my favorite death metal record of all time, Mental Funeral, both released in 91.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, walk us through like hearing those records first time. What's that like?
I don't know if I could say Dismember is my favorite death metal band ever, but they are up there.
Mm-hmm.
Very close. I love that band. It's everything I like about that type of music. The sound, the image, everything is perfect.
Mm-hmm.
I love that band, and I've gotten to know him as like Fred Espy, specifically as a person. I've talked to him. I've traded shirts with him. He remembers me when I see him. Coolest dude ever. You couldn't ask for more out of that scene. But buying those records, I didn't know a damn thing yet. And we were writing letters to bands and doing all that crap too before that.
Right.
Getting in Tomb's demo and this and that. Me and my buddy Dwayne Morris, we were going nuts doing all that. And he was an embalmer at that time, and he was just trying to make connections.
Mm.
And then when he was out of embalmer, then we formed Decrepit. And then we sort of latched on to all his connections. We literally would sit around like this on a Friday night at that age and have writing parties. Sit there and write letters.
Yeah.
To bands. Hey, you want to trade tapes? Or hey, I just want you to have my tape because I like your band or whatever.
Yeah, for the younger fans, I mean that's
and we
tape
got in touch
scene,
with all the European fans. We made sure because that's what we wanted to get in touch with, the Swedish bands, Dismember and Tomb.
Stream to me
Finnish
was
Disgrace
perfect.
and Demigod and all those bands from Finland, everywhere. Yeah. We just wanted to be in touch with all because that's our favorite shit. And and they would write back and they were cool and you form these little relationships. Then I used to do a fanzine called Scab Mag, and then I did that after that, and then I already had these connections.
Mm-hmm.
And it's literally sitting at tables writing letters. You didn't have.
Stream to me is I think it's a perfect. It's an amazing death metal record. I love that record. Still listen to all the time. Like Never Falling Stream.
Yeah, that's perfect.
91. It's great. To me it's like people talk about Entombed. I think for the perfect Swedish death metal sound, I think Like an Overflowing Stream is a better embodiment of all of it. It's perfect.
Yeah, how was that? Listening to, stuff like Obituary, Morbid Angel, Autopsy. How different was it? Like when you heard Like an Everflowing Stream?
With those guitar sound, that in Left Hand Path. I mean, Eric was huge.
Mm-hmm.
All those records coming out, we liked every single record was great.
Yeah,
every one. Morbid Angel, obviously.
How did Cannibal Corpse, like Butcher to Birth, comes out here? How was that different? Was it a different sound, different scene? Was it? Did you like it the same? They toured together around that time. Was it the same kind of vibe? Was it? That's a big record too for Cannibal.
It is.
Birth is like.
But they were, because they were American, they were different.
Yeah.
When you did that, when the Swedish bands hit here, you're like, wow, what's that crazy guitar sound? Bands over here don't have that. How do you do that? Nobody even knew what they were doing. How do you do that?
That guitar sound is different.
And it attracted you. You're like, damn, it's fucking
overdone now, but it is
right. But back then
it
was new and exciting. Everything was.
Into the Grave comes out around the same thing.
It seemed like the shit back then was like, and I was only 11 or 12 in '91. Yeah, I turned 12 at the end of the year.
11, yeah.
And you were what 6?
Actually, 91. I was 6 years old. Yeah.
6, yeah. So it's like
I was into flinging my own poop across the
but you listen to this stuff later, but you appreciate it. But
but it seems
I
like
just got lucky with my age to be right in the middle of it. With our friends, that's why it was great.
And he was, you're asking about Cannibal Corpse, and maybe you can, attest to this. But going back, it seemed like the stuff back then was more. Everybody was into everything. Like it was death metal. Everybody was in. It was almost like the '80s, where it was like
it kind of was.
You were into Blue Oyster Cult, Maiden, Ozzy, like all these different things, and it didn't really matter.
Yeah, now
that's true.
Yeah,
it wasn't the content.
You have subgenres back then. Now you have all that bullshit. You didn't have that.
That's true. It's a good point.
I went to Michigan Death Fest 2 in '91. Autopsy played, first time ever seeing them.
Really?
Because I didn't get to go to Day of Death, so the first record was still out. Then it was '91, Michigan Death Fest 2. Metal Funeral had just come out. I remember I ordered the shirt through the mail and I didn't get it, so I was bummed. So I went to their merch booth. I'm like, hey man, I ordered a shirt, and this is my name. I don't have any proof of anything.
This is a Blessed of the Sick, Morbid Angel too, which also comes out in '91. This is around that same time.
Around the same time, yeah. So I asked him. I told him I ordered it. I didn't get it, and he was just like, okay man. He just gave me the Metal Funeral shirt right out of the box, and I got it. So it was them. Cannibal played. Butchered was not out yet, but almost. And then Baphomet from New York. A couple other bands, but
Baphomet had a demo of them.
Cannibal and Autopsy. It was one day. One day, all these bands. Phobia was there from California.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Definitely, Phobia had a demo at the time. Yeah,
I met the drummer. He was super cool. I was in touch with him for a while after that through mail. But I remember by the time Cannibal played, and they played a few songs off Butcher. Didn't really know the songs yet. They didn't know that they totally changed from the first album. The first album was like great, but it's so different compared to that as far as production.
Yeah.
They were jumping. They were trying to.
How did you feel about Butcher at Birth? Did you feel it was different? Like it was. It was,
but I liked it at the time. I still appreciate it. But I remember literally they were playing, watching this stage, and I was like 17 years old. We've been there all day long.
It's a long fest. Yeah, it's a long time.
I'm like this, like literally in front of the stage. I go. That first song they played, and I'm like, oh yeah. Well, but I was just so tired. It was one day to do that back then. But Autopsy was there, and they played Mental Funeral songs, even though it wasn't. It just come out. If you really hardly even knew.
It's such an ugly record. It's so.
It was just
to me, it's perfect. It's a perfect death metal record.
Like you said, going back to what you said, yeah. You just liked that. I mean, that whole day, everything. I liked everything.
How did Autopsy go over? Because here's the thing. I love. My favorite death metal record of all time is Mental Funeral.
It became mine after a long time, and then the more I was listening to Autopsy, I was like, you know what? Covenant used to be number one.
Right.
Then
Covenant is great.
Mental.
Because you have look at stuff like you have like Entombed Clandestine comes out, which is a departure a little bit from what they were doing. It's a bit thrashier. Like Autopsy, that's an ugly record, man. Like that's a really ugly.
But again, now we're going back to. Everybody was just into everything. Now, Autopsy became, in the modern day, this, it's cool like Autopsy now, and nobody cared for years.
Yeah.
They would go out and play, and nobody gave a fuck. Like, just remember, now nobody cared.
Yeah.
But we were just those kids that, we just liked anything. And these bands would come over to the States, as an example for the European bands, but Autopsy didn't do a lot back then. They didn't even tour until '93. They did one small tour.
And the one tour they did failed.
One tour, Vital Remains and Incantation and Morgue from Chicago.
Yeah.
One small tour. It sort of flopped.
Yeah, it was a flop tour.
Overall, because I know the Incan guys back then, and it was okay. And it was it. And then everything. Then they sort of died off. They put out that last record, '94 Shit Fun. They did nothing to support it. maybe something in California.
Mm-hmm.
And then they came back, and now it's different now.
Right, it's a different world.
Now it's a different world, all this other shit,
Definitely.
the internet. But back then, everybody loved it. Everybody loved everything.
It's like almost like
loved everything.
In retrospect,
you didn't have you had 500 bands. You didn't have 5 million.
Yeah.
So that was 500 was enough.
Right.
And everybody could like everything.
That's what I always thought, even with like thrash metal, whatever. Like you liked one, you liked them all.
Right.
Right. It was like you liked the whole.
Same idea.
Because like, what do you listen to? I listen to metal. Like, oh, you like death metal? Oh yeah, I love death metal. And it didn't matter what band it was. Now it's like.
It's way different.
It's totally.
Yeah, definitely.
Subgenre. That word, when that word became a thing, and it just.
How was was stuff like Convulse, World Without God? How was that? Was it really underground thing? Was that more like that? Those are great records. You have,
really underground.
You have Convulse. You have Funebrate, Children of the Scorn, like 91.
I think a lot of that stuff, at least for me, it was known, like especially in the past like 10, 15 years when it started getting. Re-released, reissued, stuff like that. Then a lot of that shit.
It took on new life.
Yeah, and it was like, oh wow, man, this stuff.
By the time I was younger, it was more like you had to those were like classic records.
Mm-hmm.
By the
I was
early
buying
2000s,
those as they were new, and they were great, but they just the bands. The labels weren't big, and it's just as far as they could do them, as far as they could promote it, as far as they could do. The bands were going to tour, and that was it.
Very underground. You had to really be tapped in the underground.
Right, you had to. And we were, and our friends were, so we'd order them or buy them or go to Shattered Records when it was open if we could get it locally. And it was just something that we always felt, I guess we felt sort of special that we kind of knew and nobody else knew or whatever. It was kind of like that back then.
Because, Kurnugia, obviously the fans listening and stuff like that are going to Kurnugia is a very old school death metal band. We have to talk about, in Kurnugia, especially 91, Dawn of Possession, Immolation, might be the best death metal record ever.
That might be a lot of people. We're talking about best death metal records.
That's, a big...
I was just talking with Arnie about this the other day, okay? And I'm going to break you guys' heart. Never understood Immolation. I love Dawn of Possession.
You're killing me with that.
Love Dawn of Possession.
You or him?
Me. Oh. Actually, both of us. Because we were talking, we were like, just not... I totally respect the band. Like,
yeah. Well, I'll give you. They've totally morphed into something completely different than that. Their first record is basically all their demos and stuff produced in a good way.
It is.
They went to
Fleming Rest Music.
They went to Berlin and recorded at Music Lab where all the great German records were produced.
Fleming Rest Music. Yeah, all
the Mania, Tankard, Creator all went to Music Lab. That's why they wanted that because they liked all that. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, fuck that. Fucking Morrisound. Every fucking band on Road Runner was going to Morrisound. Mm-hmm. And it was at the time, sure, I liked it, but looking back, okay, yeah, it was overkill.
Mm-hmm. When I was younger,
but those guys were smart enough to know that fuck that, and they got a way better record out of it.
It's honestly,
it's dark, it's evil,
it's funny,
it's crazy sounding. Nothing else tops it. That's
when I was younger, Yellow hated it. Like when I was younger, it's funny.
Remember you told me that. I'm like, you're a fucking weirdo.
It's crazy. He's like, it's weird because I had it when I was younger and I loved it. It was cool, but it's like honestly for us, for like my generation, Effigy of the Forgotten that comes out in 91, was a bigger record for our generation. Came up with when I was younger, getting the death metal, like the Dying Fetus thing was big, the brutal stuff was big. Effigy was the record.
So I was more into Suffocation at that point.
Yeah. I was going to ask you what you felt about Suffocation when it came out. Was it like Immolation? Was there noticeably a difference? Did it sound different?
The sound different. That was like I just said. That was Roadrunner Morrisound. It's great. I do like it. But like a lot of my old friends my age don't like it because it's just I don't like that stuff.
The bomb blast and stuff. Yeah.
Sort of. I don't care what you say. They sort of created that.
Yeah.
Yeah, they did.
They were originators. There's 100 million spinoffs, but I still like it. I don't care.
It is a cool record. Yeah.
Brian, our Bergeron and bass player Kurnugia, he still likes it. Like a guy my age, but like most of my older, closer friends don't.
Yeah.
They don't like any of that stuff. Oh no,
they don't like the stuff that Spawn.
They don't even like. They don't even like Cannibal. I'm like, oh, it's too now. That's gay.
It's crazy because I like all of that, like the brutal death metal, like back then.
Right.
All the stuff that came out. So Cannibal, Suffocation,
Yeah, I do
Gore
like.
Guts. I think Considered Dead came
Considered
out.
Dead
Yeah,
came out in
yeah.
91,
Oh,
which
yeah.
I was
that
happy
stuff.
enough to sing a song with you guys live for that. Like
Gore
that's
Fest,
incarnated.
was it Mind Loss came out. In
Mind
91?
The
Loss?
first one. Yeah.
I love all of that shit.
Mind Loss is a little
False.
bit more commercial. I was gonna get into Mind Loss. Mind Loss starts at. I look at Mind Loss almost like I look at Clandestine, where it's like you start to kind of see death metal get. I don't want to say commercialized, but a little bigger sounding.
Oh, well,
By that time, it was getting a little bigger.
No, wasn't 91. 91 wasn't Mind Loss.
Mind Loss was 91,
I
yeah.
thought False was 91.
False was 92.
Okay.
Yeah, Mind Loss 91.
Mind Loss is basically, because I was already into that band, writing letters to them. That's basically just their demos, produced in a good way. That's all it is.
Sounded good.
They have 3 demos. I actually have a reissue of vinyl that has all the demos, and then Mind Loss in a fucking thing.
Okay.
I love the demos. They're just raw, dirty demos.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And they just were produced right. Then but then when they went to False, they got a better drummer. The original drummer's still on.
That's
Mind
true.
Loss. And
That's a good
he's
point.
a very basic
Yeah,
drummer, but I love it. That's why
definitely.
growing up with Jim Kanye, and we loved that shit more than anything. It was exactly what I liked about death metal. Kind of raw, dirty, the European thing.
Is that what you say? I mean, like, there's Sentenced, Shadows.
But
of the
yeah,
Past.
that was
Is
again
that-
that was a under the radar record.
Did you
Nobody
feel like
cared
did
about
you feel like the
that either.
Finnish bands and some of the European bands had more of a dirty sound and kept more of that? Like, was it why you guys kind of went towards more of those
I think
demos?
so.
Was it more like that? Because it is a dirtier sound.
Yeah, darker. Like we didn't want to jump around and mosh. We wanted it to be dark and
Yeah.
evil and like that kind of thing.
Definitely.
We totally went towards that. So the European stuff, we felt like that, and then we found Immolation. We're like, well, that's an American, but they're kind of like that.
It does have a more European.
Incantation,
Sound,
we
especially
found
the
them
production.
even before Golgotha was out. We found them, or
Right.
they kind of like that stuff. They must like that stuff too.
As
They
we get
kinda do
into
that, too.
92, I mean, Golgotha is going to be a 92 record we'll talk about.
Right.
Absolutely.
So I mean, we were listening to Incantation 91, the demos and everything. We like that's so no. So those American influences and those European influences, we sort of made our own idea.
I was gonna say, bands like Bolthrower were too in Benediction. You have Grand Leveler, you have Bolthrower coming out with War Master. Were those bands different? How did they fare with like all this kind of sound? Because it's a little different. Those bands sound different than
They do, but it's Bolthrower I feel fits the best. But again, we're gonna go back to that statement we said before. You just liked it all.
Yeah, you just liked it.
I remember buying records. We'd go and we didn't even if we didn't know a band, you'd actually look at a record and that's a cool cover. Oh,
Yeah.
the picture. Those guys look cool. They got cool shirts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, I'll buy it. And it was a cassette, and we, as an example, go to Shadow Records. We would do this, and we'd get in the car and be like, drive the car. And
I know that's why when we do
the music would start, we'd be like, look at my buddy, we'd be like, yeah. Or if we'd look and it would suck, and we'd be like,
it's funny, it's funny. Yeah,
that's what we did a lot.
And when we do like the doom metal stuff, like doom metal episodes, where we talk about that, that's my thing. Like my genre is doom. That's my favorite.
Yeah.
And so many people, what do you like? Doom death? Do you like funeral doom?
Right.
Do you like stoner doom?
All that
to me, it's like doom. It's
all
just fucking
subgenre
doom,
stuff.
dude.
Yeah, exactly.
It's just doom. I like. It doesn't matter if I like Cathedral or The Obsessed or
right.
Like, all of it to me is just there's like Death Doom is obviously or Doom, but to me it was all the same. It's just Doom. So
right.
it's like.
It's Black Sabbath's Doom. If you want to go that
it's weird too this year because I remember one time Dora and I were hanging out and we were going I forget what show we were going to, but I had Terrorizer on and he was like and I talk about there's so much great grind that comes out during this time. There's Extreme Napalm Terror puts out Y, like Siege puts out the LP with Seth.
You're
Putnam.
the grindcore guy.
And it's there's Crossed Outs for up. There's Drop Deads. Crossed Out 7 comes out. Drop Dead stuff comes out. And Dora was like this is like the stuff when I was in a car, like I would hear. Mm-hmm. And it's like, General Surgery, Necrology of 91. That's such a monumental gore grind record. But Dora would always be like, I would hear it. I would just hear it. And it was cool. And it's like, I remember when I was younger, I would hear Necrology. And I had the tape from Nuclear Blast. And I wasn't a big gore grind guy. But it was that's a great fucking release.
Yeah, I mean,
it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing release.
When Carcass came out, and we were so into that, and then they come over here with Death, was ready the second album, but they were playing a lot of the symphony stuff, which is what we loved.
Mm-hmm.
Then we saw that, and then the Swedish guy said, "Hey, let's do a project and spiff Carcass for."
Did
fun.
you like necroticism? Because I know your feeling about Carcass. You're not a big Carcass guy.
It's okay. They would start. Okay, look, we know how to play our instruments, and look, we got this guy could play better, so we're gonna do that.
Mm-hmm.
It got a lot of hate. When we posted, it got a lot of hate.
It's fine, but is it? If I'm listening to Carcass, am I going to that one?
Right.
I'm going to Symphonies of Sickness. Period.
It's weird because I've always been, and you know this.
Some people like
especially.
just that version of Carcass, the polished version.
For me,
that's fine, but
it's
generational.
Necroticism and Heartwork, and I came around. I liked Heartwork, and then I didn't like it.
Yeah.
The song, I think it's the song Heartwork, literally sounds exactly like Creator's People of the Line.
It does sound like
so. Every time I hear it, I'm like,
damn
it. But I love those two albums. The Symphonies is so like it's cool, but I told you before, Carcass isn't even in my top 25 like favorite death metal bands.
A lot of people feel that way. It's kind of it's
and
some people either worship it or
I never really thought about it. I mean, I was completely addicted to that back in the day, but honestly, modern day, I don't go to them a lot. I still love it. It's there.
Mm-hmm.
But you're talking about the General Surgery. I remember, like I said, those guys. That was like their little tribute to that thing. The Swedish guys doing
the style they kind of abandoned.
Yeah, they made it sort of. They did it for fun, I think, as it shows. But then Relapse Records came out, and they were signing anything they liked. Yeah. They were guys underground.
Deceased, Luck of the Corpse.
They were putting all that stuff out, and I would go to these early fests. Like I said, the Milwaukee '91. I went my first road trip, and then the next year we went to Rhode Island. It was '92, and like Relapse was blowing up at that time, big. All the Benediction. They were taking on. They were called Nuclear Blast America now, and we went there. And the table. I mean, they got Benediction long sleeves and General Surgery long sleeves, and then they had the tapes and the records, and I'm just like, yes. I'm buying it all.
I feel like death metal is a little bit more commercial. I'm gonna say commercialized, but it was a little. It was definitely a bigger like. I feel like Carcass coming out by this time like. Carcass changing their sound, I can see why, and I've always said this. I can see why people would hate it.
They changed more. Like for me, going from Reek to Symphonies, to Necroticism to Heartwork to
whatever.
You're pissing off a lot of people.
It was like they couldn't figure out.
Right.
Like they just kept, and then with the newer stuff that came out, and people were like, "Oh, everybody was going crazy." Like Surgical Steel. It's like, it just wasn't. I was like,
and it's funny.
Bill Steer's a phenomenal guitar player. There's no doubt.
It's cool.
I said they were developed. Like I said, they were developing their skills, especially back then, and they wanted to show it off. I get it.
I feel that way about Metallica.
Look what he went on to do. I don't listen to Arch Enemy at all anymore, but I did like it. I'll be honest with you, especially the stuff with when they had Johan.
The first three are the only ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that first one that had her on it. I think Wages of Sin.
Wages of Sin, yeah.
I actually went back and played it on YouTube a couple weeks ago. Just like I haven't listened to this shit in 15 years, and I was like, when the song started, I'm like, oh yeah.
Where No Life Dwells. What do you feel about it? Unleashed. That's classic.
Perfection.
Is that
perfection?
Is that one of your favorite Swedish?
It's one of them. It's one of them. Yeah. That's the thing that was cool.
Right.
Because we were already sort of like.
Bands were doing the style that you liked. You didn't need to go to Carcass, Necroticism. You had bands that were doing that kind of thing.
Here's a question, because I know how you feel about this album, because it's probably the same as I do. But when I talk to a lot of older metalheads, and you're not that, just a few years older than me, but it seems like a lot of guys don't like Sepultura Arise.
Love Arise
as much.
I was about to just mention that, but as I was getting into Metallica,
it's weird because like with us, we hear it.
I grew up on Arise. I love it.
I love everything. Morbid Visions.
I love Beneath the most, but I love
Schizophrenia. I love Beneath. But
I was surprised that Arise is like considered like the departure for people. I was like, that's insane to me. I can't.
How was it then? Like, cause I
did like it when it came out, but I thought I did, and more now I do think it's definitely a departure and a different. It's weird. I remember it was weird. I remember getting it and I liked it, but I'm like, what is that weird I always thought that drum sound, that snare was totally.
I think if I were into Mega Slaughter, Calls from Beyond,
The
I would
band,
probably think it was a departure.
Cancer's Death Shall Rise. You ever? I don't know if you.
I was about to mention it. Yeah, that's
It had the same exact weird drum sound.
It does.
It must be a snare sample because it's not natural.
Mm-hmm.
Compared to
really
Beneath the Remains is so natural and so great. I thought it took away from the brutality of it. I like the songs. There's fast songs, there's great songs.
That's a good point. I never thought about that.
But it's a weird drum sound for me because I was already
It is cleaner sounding.
Yeah,
it is.
And they were,
the songs are a little more stripped down.
To me,
they are. But I do like it. But I guess I could see why people do say that. But when it came out, I bought it and I enjoyed the hell out of it.
Well, just wait till we get to '96. I like Roots too. But it's like
no, I'm not.
Like, I don't even really. I mean, KSID has like 2 songs for me.
It's weird because for us, we would consider Arise
a classic
like
record,
the old school. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Chaos AD would be the different.
I think they still belong. That still belongs in that category.
I can see why older stuff.
After KSAD, KSAD goes with Roots and that.
How did you feel about Soulside Journey?
Yeah,
I want to pick about the Soulside Journey. Was it? Because I love that record. Was it a?
I liked it because
was it on the radar? Was it like?
Oh yeah.
Kind of like was it a?
That brings
peaceful
up a good
record?
point because when I was looking at like, okay, what death metal albums came out? You know, what black metal?
Yeah.
There really wasn't a
thing.
A lot of demos.
Not until '93. Really,
Yeah.
That's when the black metal really hit.
There was, I think, Venom had an album out.
Yeah.
Was it Temples of Ice?
Temples of Ice, yeah. I like that Venom record. I think it's a cool Venom record.
Bathory had Twilight.
Right.
Twilight of the Gods, I think it's a cool record too for Bathory. If you're into the Viking era of Bathory,
right.
I like that record a lot.
Your old school followers.
Dismember was very influenced by that.
It was way under the ear.
Yeah.
It was under the radar. The death metal was prevailing.
That's the thing. It was crazy when I was looking at that. Because I'm looking at, I always want to look like what are the hard rock albums, the death metal, thrash metal, whatever. And when I got to black metal, it was just like all demos.
Yeah,
right, yeah. I think it was '93 when that stuff really hit.
I think Rotting Christ. I think it was maybe Passage to Arcturo.
Right.
91, yeah.
And it was way obscure.
Was dark. Was
small labels, obscure.
The Soulside Journey, I think, is an amazing record. I think it's an awesome
I wrote
record.
to them for my fanzine, Scab Mag. There's one sitting over there. We did that for from 90 to 92, like 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
We did 2 issues. And we would literally sit here and pick bands that we liked, write a letter. Hey, will you do an interview? Wait for that. Yeah, I'll do one. Okay, send it. And then wait for them to send it back. And I wrote Dark Throne in 91 or whatever. Thinking all they had was that one record. But they were already doing things behind the scenes that nobody really knew about yet until that next record came out.
Mm-hmm.
So they send back the answers and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I had simple questions. I forget. But I said, and I asked things about death metal and Peaceville. And they sent photos. And they had the one guy's like, with makeup. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What's this?
Was it surprising to you when they
were saying
sounds?
Weird shit like about, kind of like, was it against death metal in the answers.
Yeah, who was it?
I was going to say, was it surprising you when they switched sound? Yeah. Was that like a weird thing?
I get this envelope back, and I'm like, why is he got makeup on? The next thing you know, that record comes out, oh, now they're fucking Nocturnal Culto and this and that, and the guy's like this on the cover. I'm like,
right.
Compared to that record was complete death metal.
Arnie told me that he knew somebody that wrote them a letter saying, Soulside is like my favorite album, like absolutely.
I think that's Dwayne, right?
It was either Dwayne or me. I think I've talked
they wrote back.
I thought like, Dwayne,
this album's horrible. Like
I think that might be me because I think
was it you?
I think me and Arnie have talked about that. I think because I'm the one. I remember writing them. That was one of my picks to do interviews for our magazine. Was that band, and I was so thrown by their answers to my questions because I didn't know what they were doing yet because it wasn't out in public yet. Mm-hmm. And then the record, now I get it.
Oh yeah, so it was kind of like.
This is Sav that she can't answer the questions, but she wants to be in the interview apparently.
No, that is a weird album because
it is. It's dark.
Amazing.
No, it's amazing.
It's great.
But they were a death metal band. They were kids playing all of them. Yeah, Immortal was a death metal band.
Yeah.
Old Funeral.
Right, Old Funeral. Yeah.
They were death metal. And Marduk was a death metal band. The first Marduk record is death metal. Right. Dark Endless is death metal to me.
Dark Endless is way more death metal than you're right. It is.
I love that record. Yep. But they have this Swedish guitar sound. The Fuck Me Jesus demo is death metal.
There's also like I want to.
It evolved.
Did you see that as going from Soulside to Transylvanian? Did you think they sold out? Were you into it? Did you like Transylvania, or were you like, man, what is this
wasn't. I'll be honest with you. I mean, I like some now. I was never really a big black metal guy, and back then I didn't really. The death metal thing wasn't still.
It skipped you, yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't boring or tired yet. I was still enjoying that. Mm-hmm. But some people were already bored and tired with it. Oh, black metal, this is cool. This is different. It's satanic, and they everything's black and white, and everything's
was it a production?
People didn't like good oh, fuck that good production.
It took me a long time to get in to a lot of that black metal back then.
I liked it
different.
Because more sound, I don't care if people...
It made a standard.
Yeah, and I don't care if people don't... With Harmony Corruption, people were pissed at, Scott Burns. I still like the production on it, but when I heard black metal, I think the reason why
I liked a lot of black metal when I was younger was I came to, and this is a great segue, I liked a lot of punk when I was younger, and I think in my experience, a lot of the punk kids I was friends with liked a lot of black metal and didn't like death metal. Right. And the reason why, I think the production, I think the rawness of it, like I have to mention, like, you have Acid comes out with the Grey Earth, you have Nausea comes out with Crimes Against Humanity in '91, Anticism, one of the greatest crust punk bands of all time. You have Fear of God, two Fear of Gods. You have Fear of God, Pneumatic Slaughter, which is the best noise core record of all time. When I was younger, it was like, Excruciating Terror. You have so much stuff in '91 that's cool. The punks liked black metal, I think, because it was a rawer sound.
No,
it was more in line with what they were into.
It went against the establishment.
Yeah,
and death metal
that's
people.
What the black metal guys did. They like.
I can't imagine being into Convulse and then liking a Fear of God record. There's completely different sounding things.
The other Fear of God I'm surprised.
The LA Fear of God. Yeah, yes. This is great.
So for years, like I hadn't listened to that in years. So
awesome.
Dawn Cry. She was in Detente, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dawn
I saw they toured with Grave and Incantation in '94.
How did that go?
It was weird.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was cool. Dwayne was in the Incantation. My friend Dwayne was in that year, and Grave Soulless and them. But I guess they did well. But I think she was partying pretty hard and stuff.
Yeah.
They played. There was a club called Rum Runners in the Flats. It's actually open.
Rum Runners, yeah. I remember that.
And they couldn't not get a venue, and they got it last minute, and it was Grave Soulless up in this weird little bar on a Wednesday or something.
Right.
And Fear of God and Incantation.
That album, that Fear of God album, it's like, I mean, it's got like death metal, thrash metal influence in it. It's heavy, but it sounds like
some of the vocals sound like Hole.
It sounds like if Concrete Blonde
did
a metal album.
That's true.
When I was listening to it, I was like,
it's all over the world.
The vocals sound like Hole.
I like different stuff. I like weird stuff, like that. And I was into it, but I think that was really the only thing I think they have one other album.
I think that's they might have one other release. That might be their only kind of thing. And it's funny, like I got into that band because I was, again, Fear of God, Pneumatic Slaughter, like for grind noisecore is like that's a god tier noisecore record. Like as far as like that style of music, like that's when you search Fear of God, when you're looking for Fear of God, like people always look at like the LA Fear of God, which is not the Swiss Fear of God is the noisecore band, which I always looked into. But the Fear of God from LA is cool, but it's a weird time. It's like, there's really like the 90s really, as we're getting more in the late 90s, grind starts to really take precedent and hardcore starts to kind of take shape here. And you start to see, Death Side from Japan, who I'm a big Japanese hardcore fan. I know Bet on the Possibility, that's one of the best Japanese hardcore records of all time. Integrity comes out with Fear of Tomorrow, which I know you end up playing Integrity on Humanity as a Devil. A lot of people know about this. It's like, that's... What was Integrity at this time? 91. Walk me through how big it was at that time. Was it big? Was it like it's a big record for hardcore? It's one of the biggest hardcore records of all time.
One of the biggest bands, that would do local shows in this town at the old Peabody's in the Flats, sell it out, crazy, and the record sounded like $1 million.
It does sound good for hardcore.
Right down the road from here.
Yeah.
where Characters is that bar. You guys been there? Right next to it, the building. This is where it used to be Mars Studio originally. That record's made there. The Face Value, like early albums and demos were recorded there. All that early shit. Jim's old band Decimation was all recorded there. And then he moved into Level 5 later.
Yeah.
Rehearsal studios, and that's where all the early Mushroom Head and Hatrix was all done later. But he was right in this little building. All those records. I didn't even know that till later. I never got to be in that building, but
I mean, 91. That's. I mean, you say what you want about Integrity. I mean, that's a massive hardcore record for like for that style of music. We're getting away from death metal, but it's like for hardcore, like that's a pivotal record.
It's hard to say
that. It is.
That people say that they invented metalcore. They didn't. I mean, I think they're fine with that, but they weren't trying to.
I don't think they were trying to either.
They liked Slayer, and then they liked hardcore.
Right.
Yeah.
That's the only reason it happened. They didn't want to have no stupid label on them.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's what made them different, because now all the bands, they were on, well, we're strictly hardcore. We're blah, 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 blah.
Is that why maybe they...
So here's the thing. Like
Aaron likes Slayer, so they listen to Slayer. So
right.
It's kind of like with death metal now, like newer death metal bands, or even with newer thrash metal bands, okay? And Stone, any sort of style. Back then, those dudes, you're into so many different things.
Right.
Right.
And you use all those influences, like Integrity. They listen to Slayer, they listen to hardcore.
Mm-hmm.
So they just wrote shit
that
came up that sounded like what they sound like. Now, I feel like a lot of bands like a lot of death metal bands are probably like, we only exclusively listen to Incantation.
Right, and it
It's
shows.
exactly what we want to sound like.
It's much more...
derivative, yeah.
Much more derivative. It's much more under this fucking anal probe now.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be, but...
Rather than...
just doing it what you feel.
Yeah.
They did it. They didn't do that to... Well, I want to sound like Slayer, so I did. No, they just
I don't
did
think... I don't think Integrity was trying to sound like that. I think it just happened to have that sound.
Yeah. So therefore we do.
That's why that's why all of that stuff then is still popular now. Or at least there's probably a lull, but it came back.
Yeah.
Like Autopsy and stuff. It's like... They're not trying to sound like anybody else. They're just trying to sound
like...
But
there's bands doing that now.
Yeah.
But it's just a different world now.
It's weird too with 91, because I mean, we're gonna get into like again, like it's a big year for mainstream stuff. I mean, Metallica Black Album, we gotta talk about it. We gotta talk about Nevermind. What was the consensus? You're a younger person. I grew up, these are massive records, right? Use Your Illusion, Nevermind, Black Album. Walk me through. These are huge records. What was the...
Let me say first with the Black Album. I remember I was 11 years old, lived in North Canton, Quonset Hut, the record store at the time. The original one was in Canton.
Yeah.
And they always had Midnight Madness. And so it was, release day was Tuesday, every Tuesday. So it was Monday night. Everybody would show up.
Stand in line and wait.
Yeah, they always had the radio, like 106.9, the radio station down there was there,
Right.
And they would always have, and it wasn't just Metallica. I mean, they had other releases,
sure,
like whatever.
Yeah. Whatever release, they would do that.
And I remember they had one for, I think, Red Hot Chili Peppers, Blood Sugar Sex Magic came out in 91.
Big record, yeah, 91 too.
But I specifically remember the Black, and it was huge.
Dude, it was a massive
And
record.
it was huge. And so for me, before we get to how you feel about it, for me, and it's I commented in the group, I don't ever want to hear Enter Sandman again.
No.
Hey,
I didn't like that song.
The record's great
back
though.
Then.
I love it.
But the record is so massive for me. I understand that.
I don't want to ever hear Teen Spirit again, but I love. It's my. Everybody knows. Dora knows that I'm a huge Nirvana fan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't ever want to hear that song again. That's one of the, as far as Butch Vig, it's one of the most important records, dude. And you understand, like, as Dora talks about when he was 17 getting into death metal and stuff like this, I remember being a young kid, a little kid, with my sister staying up watching them play that stuff live. And my sister would record Nirvana, would record them playing live on MTV, and I would sit up with her. That was something for me. Like, that was like, it was a massive... That was a cultural change. It's a massive record, dude.
Well, I mean, think
crazy.
about
it. Is
when I'm watching award shows and I'm seeing Metallica play live. I mean, it was huge for me.
Well, it was huge for everybody to see him on there.
Mm-hmm.
What was the
cool,
shift?
The lifelong fans, you were disappointed.
Did you feel the Nirvana influence right after? Was it that big? Was it like afterwards? It's
even before I got into thrash and before death metal there was thrash and there was all that. I was listening to Kiss and Dokken and Rat and
right.
Iron Maiden and Ozzy and that started to go away. And then you had that other stuff creeping in. Mainstream.
Yeah.
So I said, well, I don't really care about mainstream. None of it's doing anything for me.
Right.
So I'll go another way, but I'll start going more underground. So then all that stuff started coming, and everybody,
That's a good point.
So
Metallica fans were disappointed. I mean,
were you kind of like,
because
I'm into other stuff now.
Other people even Metallica fans are just say they're disappointed. They don't even like Justice. I like Justice. I don't care.
I love Justice.
I still like it. It's still them. Still thrash. They were still making ridiculously too long songs and all that stuff. But there's all kinds of crazy.
I agree with that.
They were still
definitely
writing metal songs.
And I think I think people, it's like revisionist bullshit when they talk about, oh, Lars sucks. He's always sucked. And I never heard that back then.
Stop.
That dude, I love. When I listened to Justice when I was a kid, I loved listening to the drum parts.
It was It was cool stuff he did. I mean, what he is today, whatever.
What's he supposed? What's he supposed to play on those? I always tell people, it's like, what is he supposed to play?
I mean,
what would you rather he play?
These are that I've heard that opinion from death metal people. Like, they weren't a death metal band. They were before all of that.
Yeah, dude. It's not like
that. And
it's unfair comparison.
They weren't paying attention to that world.
No, and they shouldn't be.
And they were going so far.
Right.
And people didn't even really know how big they were getting yet.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't even really tell, but they knew. They in their little camp.
How did you feel about the Black
Album? They were growing, so people were like, "Oh yeah, well, he sucks because Pete Sandola's a great." Nobody even knows what that is. They're not on MTV. No one knows.
How did you feel about the Black Album as a young
listen to music
kid?
On MTV. They know about Metallica 1. They
as a 17-year-old, how did you feel about the Black Album?
They don't.
As a 17, were you upset by it? Were you like?
By what?
Did you feel upset by the Black Album?
Yeah, I was already done with it.
Done with it?
I was done with that whole world. I was fully enveloped in underground death.
You're more listening to like Massacre from Beyond, probably stuff like that. Yeah.
The Black Album, I think, is the album that
I heard
they lost a lot of older fans, but then gained a lot of those,
and it's
probably 80s hard rock, more, it was like more accessible to those people because it was.
Right. I was saying,
I should say Massacre, enjoy the violence.
The average consumer of rock and metal, and why they are the biggest band today still because of that, and they went really.
Is it crazy? Think about it. Now I like, I have Load, and all that.
I don't, but
I bought the new album. I dig it.
I dig it. I don't dislike it.
I think it's fun, but it's. I was talking to a good buddy of mine, and I said, isn't it crazy to know that they've been touring literally for 30-some years off the Black Album? Because they're not...
Well, yeah.
These other albums, they sell, but they're not...
People wouldn't know about it. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
That's the album.
Well, now they're touring off the early stuff. That's all they play is the first 3-4 records now.
It's,
live. They don't even acknowledge the existence of Load and all that. They just skip it all. Saint Anger, it doesn't even exist.
I think
some of that stuff used to be in the set list for a while.
I think
that stuff's not even in there anymore.
The most influential record from '91. I mean, whether you like it or not, probably has to be Nirvana. Nevermind. It's the biggest record probably of the 20th century.
Well, I would say
it's like.
Like I said, you got mainstream and you got underground.
It's a massive record.
It was big.
I'll say, at that point,
that whole grunge scene was big. So period.
My older cousin Scott was really into that's where I first heard Kiss, AC/DC. I borrowed Who Made Who, that tape from him. I mean, I was obsessed with that. Ozzy, Van Halen was that was his. And the Foreign Lawful Carnal Knowledge came out in '91. And that album to me was, I remember seeing the video for Pound Cake, and I'm just like, dude, this Eddie Van Halen is like everything to me. I was like totally obsessed. going all the way back to the album I still have on vinyl, my dad's Women and Children First. I listened to it when I was a kid. And so it was like when I heard Pearl Jam 10 and Nirvana, Nevermind, I know a lot of, going back, like several years later, people started talking about it, like, oh, the Seattle shit killed heavy metal. And I always said, you know what?
Yeah, I don't really feel that way either.
Soundgarden Bad Motorfinger came out, which to me is just a fucking heavy metal album. You know, I think it's
something
heavy
new
as hell.
It's hard rock, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, it's hard rock.
That stuff to me, the reason why, and I wasn't into the underground, like the death metal stuff. I was only 11, 12 years old.
Hey, you're younger. I got 5-6 years on you.
But I grew up listening to my dad's vinyl and listening to Sabbath and Deep Purple, Floyd, all that stuff, and Neil Young, Crazy Horse, and stuff like that. So when I heard Pearl Jam, Soundgarden,
could hear it in there, yeah.
Then I was like, and I know a lot of people that were into the Sunset Strip stuff, they didn't like how these guys looked because they looked like homeless guys on stage. But for me, I was like,
they look like
I don't
rockers,
give a shit how they look.
Yeah.
Because it was more about like just good songwriting. And I still love, I mean, I have Bad Motorfinger as I have a top 10 from
the content was
91.
a little different too.
And to me, it was so different. All that shit was so different because none of those bands sounded the same. And
I think it's also
you brought up all those 70s records. They, I mean, I guess they were doing an image, but they really weren't. Yeah. Like
I don't.
Deep Purple, they weren't. You know, so those guys were probably liking that stuff. They just wanted to abolish that. It's all about image thing. They just wanted to kill it.
Yeah.
Everybody did. People that didn't like that hated it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's great music that came out. No one can deny that. I don't care what you say, but
yeah,
they wanted to kill that whole thing. Go back to looking like Neil Young with a flannel, or looking like Deep Purple.
And it ended up becoming. I don't think
an image. Yeah.
It ended up becoming.
Yeah. Then it became. Then it got then it got stupid.
Which I remember being in high school. It's more of an industry thing than it really is a music thing. That's like.
Well, just like that's how the '80s got created too, though. Mm-hmm. They were just doing it to just stand out, but then once it makes money, then the corporate takes over and says, well, now everybody, you got to do this.
In a weird way, you know.
That's how it all happens.
People always ask, you know, why Nirvana is one of my favorite bands of all time, and they are. And it's like I think the reason really why is like, you know, aside from Kiss and my you know, Kiss, Napalm Death, and Motorhead are my 3 favorite bands of all time. But Nirvana is the band I think is responsible for me getting into music because my sister was 4 years older. You know, she was born in 81. So when she was younger, like when I was a really little kid, the Nirvana was the first band that I think I ever gravitated towards, hanging out with her at the TV set. I remember like being like, you know, watching them, like Nirvana, Nevermind. I remember watching like them play those sets the way people watch Kiss sets when they were in the 70s.
See, I had these same kind of experience like he's saying.
It's the same thing. It's like,
but my generation, my music.
Yeah.
Watching whatever on MTV or watching.
Same thing.
Waiting, sitting up all night, watching Headbangers Ball because they're going to show Creator Toxic Trace at the very end.
Right.
Yeah.
You're going to see the same videos you see all day. You're going to see Rat and you're going to see Doc, and they play those all day.
I just wanted to hang out with my sister and hang out.
But we were watching. We'd stay awake just for that one video. We'd pop the VHS. Oh, now we got it on tape.
Yeah.
And we could watch it over and over again, or whatever it was. When that was starting to happen, it's the same thing, but it's generational.
It is.
And I can see why you like Nirvana because they're huge punk influence there.
There's a lot of punk. There's also too. I was going to get into that. It's like there's a lot of like, you know, there's a lot of great punk. You know, like, you know, Mudhoney comes up with like, you know, like Every Good Boy Has Fudge. There's like, you know, there's a lot of good dwarves have, you know, Thank Heaven for Little Girls. A lot of great punk records from this era. Like Nirvana, can't look at them in a vacuum, but it's like they really are like that different style of music coming up in that time.
Here's the thing. I know a lot of people thought that shit just like sprouted out of
it didn't.
ether.
No. It didn't.
But the Seattle scene existed all the way back to the late 70s, early 80s.
Some of those bands were like doing 80s bands.
Yeah.
The Alice in Chains guys were like Pretty Boys.
Yeah, exactly.
Doing like hard rock.
And that's why I always thought
It slowly morphed.
It did, and because you had Mother Love Bone that was
Absolutely.
basically the Pearl Jam guys, plus you had Andrew Wood, the singer. He dies. They kind of, they do Pearl Jam at that point.
Yeah.
But in 10 to me, and I always talk to my friend Justin about this, probably the one band in Pearl Jam that every album is exponentially worse as they go. Like 10.
I like 10. I after
10?
that, you lose me.
You
with
never
the-
got into
with-
it?
No, I've never got into it at all. But if I will listen to anything, it's from that early era, because I think that's a pretty good record. You know what I liked? I still remember it. A visual of them, like he's talking, watching TV with his sister. Remember they did Unplugged back then? And I think the drummer they had was already a different drummer from the record.
Yeah,
But he was really good.
Dave, I don't know how you say his an Italian last name,
Yeah, sure,
Abergisi
yeah.
or whatever.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Don't know his name.
He was awesome.
But they did that Unplugged, and they were playing acoustic, but he was still playing a regular drum kit. So he was standing out. And there's one song that kind of
You didn't like Dave Grohl?
It kind of takes off and goes fast. And he's doing all this. And he just had all these cool moves, and
You weren't a Dave
It's
Grohl
gotta
fan?
be- it's gotta be him. It's gotta be Dave.
it sounded so good. I'm like, that guy's good.
You didn't like Dave Grohl? You weren't a Dave Grohl guy?
I mean, I appreciate him now.
Yeah.
And I learned all years later that he is a huge metal guy. But
Yeah,
I
big
didn't
metal
know
guy,
that.
yeah.
It's funny if
I didn't care.
Also, we totally
So-
skipped over. Motorhead put out 1960. We always skip over Motorhead in all these episodes. Motorhead puts out 1916.
Yeah.
By the way,
It's okay.
it's over the pocket. It's a
are
Motorhead
you a
record.
Motorhead guy, is
Yeah.
that
Oh, yeah.
Motorhead puts out 1916. It's great. It's a great Motorhead record. It's fantastic. Buy
Yes.
it. It's great.
Yeah.
I love 1916.
I think
That's
it's-
my
I think it's-
favorites, dude.
I think
Last of Filthy
it's weird,
Taylor
but I
on
do
it.
like it.
Yeah.
But what's the other one that's weird? March or Die.
March or Die Bastards. Those
Eh.
March or Die I like. It's got Hellraiser, which is on.
Another Perfect
Another
Day is probably the
91 album,
most
No More
their weirdest
Tears.
one. Yeah, that's.
But I should have taken a picture for you because with my job I was working in Warren, which is where Dave Grohl lived for a little bit when he was
Warren
a kid.
guy.
And then right in Warren they have Dave Grohl Alley, and there's like murals and shit, and it's like such a shithole alley that you
Right.
like. And I just found it one day. I was driving,
I forget it was
probably like
Warren,
a year or two ago, and I looked over and I was like, why the fuck is there like a big mural Probot on the back of this building, which is the project he did with all the metal dudes.
Right.
Yeah.
But then I was looking down and there's like Nirvana shit. I was like, what is this? And I saw Dave Grohl Alley.
Like painted murals.
Mhm.
Oh, well, that's cool.
How did you feel about Guns N' Roses? Usually, like you're a big '80s guy. You
Let me-
like a lot of
let me
'80s
just
stuff.
say
But it's
this.
Go
like,
ahead.
The reason why I always will stand up for guns, talking about the Seattle shit, Duff is from Seattle.
He is from
and he
Seattle.
was a punk dude.
he's a punk dude.
So
Yeah.
those other guys were just slimeball LA guys.
Sure.
Yeah.
Except for
What's that?
Axl.
Axl's
Izzy
from
and Axl.
Indiana.
They're from
Technically.
Indiana.
Midwest, yeah.
Slash
But-
grew up in California. He's the
Yeah.
only one.
/ Steven.
Izzy and
after Steven.
actually, Izzy especially, I think has more clout than a lot of those other guys do.
Izzy, to me, is Guns N' Roses.
I agree.
So that's why the Guns N' Roses now, it's like, it's not.
Yeah, without Izzy,
I don't have a
care.
problem with Richard Fortas, who's in the band now. I don't have a problem. He looks like kind of like Izzy, but I don't
To me,
have a
it's like
problem with
Izzy without guns is almost like Jesse Ventura without Napalm Death. It's just different.
It
It's a
is
weird
different.
comparison, but it's
And they had, after Izzy left, they had Gilby Clarke, who's a Cleveland guy.
Yeah.
right.
And I've seen Gilby Clarke numerous times back in the day. And I mean, he was such a nice guy. Now, he was on the Use Your Illusion tour.
Mhm.
He wasn't on the album.
Right.
And that album, a lot of people don't know, Steven Adler's only on one song
So, yeah,
on
one
those
song.
albums.
That's right.
And it's Civil War. And he was
It's a
so
great song.
fucking wasted.
It was-
And it took so long
Well, he's such
to
a
do
really
that.
level-headed guy.
Imagine
Can you
how fucked
what-
up you have to be kicked out of Guns N' Roses.
Right. It's like
Because
Ozzy getting
they
kicked out of
were
Black.
all-
Yeah,
they
You
were all
realize how
fucked
bad
up,
of a
especially
coke
that
problem you have to have to be
Yeah.
kicked out of Black Sabbath. If you're kicked out of Black Sabbath in 1972, you have a coke problem.
I mean, they all had problems.
It's like-
I
it's
think
like-
that was just at that point. It was just Axl's ego.
Yeah.
He was a fucking asshole.
Yeah.
Right, but he's
He was
not,
ruining
yeah.
that band, and you're going to kick that guy out. But he had the power to do that.
Yeah.
So he says, "Well, so be it.
Mhm.
Because I want to. So I don't want to show up. We're opening for Rolling Stone. They had to grab him with a cop car He wouldn't even show up.
They're big at that point.
He was
record,
imploding
man.
your own band. That's crazy.
Well,
They're
when they
fucking
toured
huge
with
at that point,
Metallica,
Yeah,
and it wasn't the Metallica
a lot
and
of those
Faith
shows.
No More. He
Metallica, Guns N' Roses. Who else was on the Metallica?
Faith No More.
Was it Faith No More?
I on one of the legs because a buddy of mine's brother
Queensrÿche
went to the
did some of
show.
those
What was the
too.
tour with Metallica and Cult? Wasn't
No, that
the
was
Cult?
No,
Was that before that?
Queensrÿche did and Justice tours.
Was Cult on the Justice tour instead of the Black Album tour?
Yeah, I think it was.
Well, that's where they got, because that's where they got Matt Sorum from, because he was on
Okay, all right.
Sonic
Right.
Temple.
I think Cult did some of the Justice tours still. Because Cult, Queensrÿche opened on Justice for.
No, he wasn't on Sonic Temple, but he was on the tour, right? Matt Sorum.
Right.
Yeah, 'cause he
Okay,
wasn't on the
I was always
album.
confused about what.
No, because he.
I was always
just on the
confused about
tour.
what Metallica tour they did with the Cult. It was Justice,
Yeah,
Leg for Justice
so.
they were doing.
I
Okay,
think.
And he
Okay.
could operate. She sits with it between
because the Black Album tour they did with Guns. That was the Guns tour when they
That
did.
was a
now you're in the Black Album, right?
Right.
that was a disaster because that
Right.
turned in because Axel
Right.
wouldn't show
I'm
up.
saying, how is that guy ruined? Now you kick that guy out of the band, then a year or two later you're destroying the band even worse than ever.
Yeah.
So it's like whatever, but yeah, you guys talk about
we
it.
kind of dump.
I was never a big.
Were you ever a Guns
DNR.
fan? Did you love a lot of '80s? We love a lot of
I
'80s
do.
stuff. But we ever into the first album? Were you ever into any Guns at all? Or was
If
it
I
like,
listen to any, to me they have one good record. That's it.
Appetite.
Right.
It's a good record because they were sort of going against the grain and being a little different.
Mm-hmm.
yeah,
Than all those
But
bands.
it's weird.
But it's
that-
still an '80s record. I don't care what anybody.
it
says.
is a great. It's
It
good.
It is.
record.
It's good, but whatever. But
I lived in Chicago.
I
At the
can't
time,
like I can't.
and I was, my God. My dad just got out of the Air Force, and we moved to
Was
Chicago.
it 86?
87.
Yeah.
87 is when that came out, but I didn't buy it until 89. So I was 9 years old. I remember they bought it, and 'cause my parents didn't care. My dad was into all that. He was all. He was like, "Yeah, I'll buy it," you
He's a
know.
rocker guy. Yeah.
My mom,
And
whatever. My mom never judged me or stopped
Yeah,
me.
my parents
Threw
were
my
the same
records
way.
away.
Yeah,
I had friends'
I remember-
parents that would do that.
Yeah,
My
I
mom
remember
would buy
being
whatever I
blown.
My mom never cared either.
being
That's-
blown away when I played that. Not around my parents, but all of the F bombs that were on fuck, and I was just like, holy shit, you know, I was like 9 years old thinking it was like
the coolest thing in the world.
Yeah, but Use Your Illusion was just a whole other level of,
It's
for
different.
me.
I remember the
Of
videos.
songwriting.
Dude. Again, it was to my sister. I remember like staying up, like watching MTV, like watching like November Rain and
But
like
that was actually
long
all
videos,
his
like-
ideas that he wanted his way out there.
Yep.
And it was all his way, and it's great. It was huge for them.
But I also remember the Nirvana interview that they distinctly where Dave Grohl was like, they were asking about the Nirvana video. He's like, "What's the Nirvana video like?" He's like, "Yeah, it's cool. It's just playing." Then Slash comes out in the ocean. And he's playing this, and they were already making fun of it.
Mhm.
And it was like you kind of tell like it was like there was a notion of like this big rock kind
I
of
think
thing
it fed
ending.
into that. All that shit fed into that it killed
Yeah.
that other style off. It just fed into it.
There was something about
There's something
about
But those
'91.
guys, those guys were punk dudes though. Those
Yeah.
guys were grimy.
There's
Seattle
something
guys.
there's something about
They didn't
'91
listen to
where
that
it's like
stuff at that point.
there's something about this
But-
era where it's like, a lot of the metal guys there's extreme music happening. So all the metal guys are doing this death metal stuff, and the mainstream stuff. So you can kind of tell there's like this notion where it's like the '80s start to not be cool anymore at all.
Dude,
Everything
can tell you
associated
right now,
with it starts to not be cool.
Yeah.
I was
like
in
this-
high school from '94 to '97. So that's when I was in high school. And I remember wearing Great White t-shirts and people just making fun of me.
Oh,
and shit.
yeah.
I wore Led Zeppelin shirts at the beginning of like in middle school, and people would make fun of me. And I was just like, it was mind-blowing because they
Right, 'cause
were...
Yeah.
They were just mainstream people, and that was already
Exactly.
that was already over. to
But
them.
it's crazy how people just turned it off because the record companies said, that shit
because
is...
they turned it
cool
off,
anymore, yeah.
so they turned it off.
Yeah.
Which is funny because
But
all
that's
the
what was happening.
Which is funny because if you really get into Nirvana like I do, a lot of the early Seattle bands, they all loved Aerosmith, they all loved Kiss. Like Nirvana has like demos of covering Kiss songs. They
Yeah.
were all into '70s music. They all loved all that stuff. It's like that's like the goofiest thing. It's like it's a weird thing. I think it's
Foo
more
Fighters
about
covers Ace Frehley songs. You ever hear those?
The who does?
Foo Fighters.
Oh, really?
They do Ozone.
Okay.
I think they did Speed Back to My Baby too. At some
Yeah,
point,
like
I don't know if they're on records or something, but they're on YouTube. But I know he loves Kiss.
That's why
that's cool.
That's why I respect Dave. Plus, he
I
did that
do.
Probot album, and he
Punk is
brought all those guys out.
like
Yeah.
Punk is also in a weird spot right now. But there's also like I got to shout out before we end here. Like the Japanese punk Tetsuare has like the best
That's
1991 Tetsuare record. That's one of the best Japanese punk records of all
I don't
time.
know a lot about that.
Shout out to
I'll be
Kids,
honest
stuff
with
like
you,
that.
I listen to a lot of the stuff he posts. I'll be honest with you, it's really cool. It doesn't even really sound like it sounds more metalish than punk.
Yeah.
A lot of the stuff.
It's got metallic.
Definitely,
It's not
that's
bad.
like I think
That's what.
I think it's more of the
grindcore
underground.
to
Like
me
yeah,
it's death metal and hardcore and punk combined.
Yeah.
It's all it is because you got it's all.
it's younger people getting into like more like the blend of things that make things happen. Like
I know if you're behind us you can't see it. I can't protector. That's
I
91.
posted it.
Oh, it's so
Did you like No More Tears 91? We got No More Tears Ozzy. Were you not a fan?
I was done
love
with
it.
Ozzy.
Really?
I was done with Ozzy after that. To be honest.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I love No More Tears. I love
I don't
that
like
record.
any Zakk Wylde records. I'd be honest with you.
You don't even No Rest for the Wicked.
In retrospect, I've heard some 11th Hour, that band we're talking about, the cover band.
Yeah.
They play Miracle Man. It's a cool song, but I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah. I see what you're saying.
When it was new, I remember it was MTV, and I was just like, I just didn't
I
know.
can't imagine somebody being
I-
into like Gorguts Considered Dead and then like
Yes,
really
I
being
would.
into like a
Yeah, but
Ozzy record.
It's generational.
Yeah, it
You
is.
guys were a little. It is. I was
It
so
is.
into that. The mainstream stuff, Ozzy. I stopped following Ozzy.
You would pass that. That passed you by.
I always thought No More Tears was like huge for a lot of metalheads, but even like Jay,
I love that
Buddy
record.
Jay,
I think it's cool.
he doesn't like it, and he's
Really?
48, I think 47, 40. He doesn't like. He's
I don't
like,
even know. Like I said, I don't
he's
even
like
know.
the last one I
Wow.
like is No Rest. He was like that one to me was just pure metal. I love
It's
it.
still a metal record.
What was
You
it
know.
about No More Tears? Was it the pop song? Was it too poppy?
It's
was
just
it
too
commercial?
poppy, and I was just so. Like I said, when I went underground, I had
Tunnel Vision.
tunnel
Yeah.
vision. And I was like, I didn't care.
I mean,
And
you
it's a
listen to
stupid way to-
Dreaming with the Dead by Ripping Corpse. You're not fucking
Yes.
listening to Ozzy
Right. I mean,
records.
in retrospect, it's a stupid way to be. But I was young and
Well, I understand. That's
I was
completely
young,
understandable.
dumb,
Yeah.
and full of cum. I didn't care. This is what I want to do. I have my group of friends. We have our band.
Yeah.
We're going to shows. We're seeing shows.
Yeah.
We're making magazines, and it was. We had our own little. We created our own
It's
little thing.
not Ozzy, No Rest for the
And I
Wicked, or
just didn't
Black Album
care.
by Metallica.
I already had
yes.
Ozzy
Yeah.
10 years before that. I was okay. Fuck that.
It's a good way to put it. That's what I always
For
say to
me.
people. It's like, yeah, it's a great way to. It's like,
Generational.
and I remember like being like when you start a band, anybody who starts a band you have to have that like that class. Like you guys had like, and back in the day with the underground, you guys had fanzines. You were tape trading. You were right when
Yeah.
you're so obsessed with things, you aren't. That Ozzy record, that Nirvana record is going to skip you. That's
all of
it's gonna
that
skip
stuff,
you, yeah.
all that tape training, that wasn't the mainstream stuff.
No.
No.
That stuff was like unattainable because they were just superstars,
That's what
and
we were
all
doing.
this
Yeah.
other stuff was, you
Right. So but it consumes so much of your time.
know. Mhm.
'Cause
And your life, yeah.
It was manual. You got to write letters and wait and do this and that. I used to just, my friends would do it, and I would just dump from them because I was too lazy. But my friend Dwayne Morris, he still had the tape somewhere. He was fully into tape trading. He's got boxes of dub tapes and the writing on them. And,
Wow.
And Steve Eggs still has. He was totally into that.
Definitely.
We had so many demos we would hear when we first heard Demolick and all those bands and Blood from Germany. We were like, how do you find these bands? And then we'd find their real product, Unleashed demo. But, that was just going back to you mentioned Unleashed first album. All those bands, we felt so connected because we were already into them as tape trading and underground.
Yeah.
And then they were all getting signed. We were right there watching them.
And then when they change their sound, I can see why you get so offended.
Right, then they
but
come over to America. Wow, hey Johnny, and we remember that? Yeah, and then by 94, 95, things were getting weird.
Yeah.
With all that stuff.
They changed their sound. I can see why it's more personal connection with like those kind
Well,
of.
that's what got me.
that.
That's one.
I just happened to be that age. I was right there.
Right, makes sense. That's what I've always respected. You guys, older guys, understand like why I love Wolverine Blues. I love that 94.
I don't hate it,
but it's like, but I understand why older guys hate that.
I do.
But when I started going to like heavier metal shows and they were at small venues, I was blown away because I'm like at the fucking stage, and it was completely different. Because the first show I ever went to was Van Halen at Blossom.
Like a big show, a major show.
My first was TLC, Montel Jordan, Boys to Men, which is, by the way, better than any metal show I've ever seen in my life.
Who opened for Van Halen back then?
Vince Neil on Exposed.
Oh,
fuck yeah!
That was that. Wasn't that Enough's Enough's drummer was on that record?
Yes.
That's it from the first record.
Vic, something fuck.
I forget his name. He almost looked like a chick.
Yes.
But he was a good drummer.
Steve Stevens on.
Yeah, I like that.
Dude, it ripped.
I like that.
He came out first. That album's amazing.
I'm sure.
Right.
And so he came out. So going from that and being at Blossom.
And then going to underground clubs.
And then I go to see, several years later, I go see In Flames.
Right.
And I'm like right there.
Yeah.
And it was just a totally different experience.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So that's when I started saying, yeah, I'm cool with like the underground, like the more independent shows, because those dudes were walking around.
Absolutely.
I saw Iced Earth and Matt Barlow was just walking around, oh my God, and I was still treating them like royalty. I was like, holy shit.
Right.
And they were just
like, going to underground shows and
you were younger and you still felt like that. And I did that too, but by the time that's what attracts us too. We could just be our normal self.
Mm-hmm.
You meet the bands that you wrote the letter to, and then now they're signed, they're touring, and you could sit there, talk to them, and hey, I'll give you a shirt, and they give you their shirt or whatever. They wear it on stage, and
we forgot to mention Asphyx the Rack. I just want to throw it out.
We forgot to
great record.
Well, that's about 8 million.
I just want to throw it out there.
There's a
Ten Commandments, also great.
Ten Commandments, Devastation.
Yeah. Morgoth Curse.
Idolatry.
Yeah.
There's a story about how a lot of those mainstream bands were kind of thrown to the side.
Yeah.
And that's Bobby Blotzer from Rat. In his book, he talks about how he got so down he was cleaning carpets. And he said he's cleaning a carpet and he looks out the window and he sees in the distance the LA Forum. And he's thinking, how fucked up is that? We used to fucking headline shows there. We used to open up for
we
like
made our
Ozzy.
videos in there.
Yeah.
Yes. And now I'm at some random person's house cleaning a fucking carpet, and that's where it's like crazy to know
how quickly it can change. Yeah.
Some of those guys did invest their money, and they did all right. A lot of those
you
guys.
have a limited time to be. But
Warren DeMartini's a trust fund baby.
Yes.
That's why he never cares about reunions. It's funny that you brought them up. I just seen a headline. I don't know if it's.
I know you're going to say.
I don't know if it's true or not, but it says, Warren considers a reunion, Bobby says. Again, I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if they do it, great, but I don't know. They should.
They should.
I just saw Steven, and he's getting older, but he can still do it.
Have you seen, I meant to tell you this.
This would have to be the last one. They have to do it like this year.
I meant to ask you.
Or just don't.
Before we were doing this, and we were talking about Rat, because when you saw Stephen Piercy recently, there was a documentary that he kind of went.
He went back to his hometown.
Did you see when he went to that house and he just knocked on the door?
And
the woman was like,
right.
Well, and he explains, and they go into the garage.
The Rat logo on
and it's like the Rat logo was still written, and she was like, oh my God, I didn't even we just thought it was like a fan that did that.
They had it was stenciled on the wall in the garage. They used to jam there. Then they show the rooms, and then they'd flash the pictures of him when he was a kid.
Dude.
Yeah.
LA Guns.
The room where his mom died, he's all fucking.
LA Guns 91 has a great record in 91.
That's my
favorite.
That's
a great LA Guns record.
Which one?
Hollywood
Vampires. It's
I don't know
fucking
that
great.
one, I'll be honest with you.
Awesome.
I only know the first two.
That's a great LA Guns record.
I've heard the hits they
fantastic.
play on Sirius.
Yeah. No, that to me is like.
It's not bad though.
It's good. It's a great LA Guns
Kiss
record.
My Love Goodbye. That's on there.
That's on.
They always play it on Sirius.
Yeah.
It still sounds like them.
That to me
absolutely does.
But bands were still putting out records then. Like I said, they were playing the small club.
Skid Row had Slave to the Grind.
Slave to the Grind is. Do you like Slave to the Grind?
It's a great record.
It's a great
record. I remember walking.
I see it, but that stuff back then, I was like,
right. I would say when you're in.
I didn't even listen to it. I didn't even touch me.
I can't imagine you listen to
12 years.
Prophecies of a Dying World by Revenant. You're probably more into than like that's yeah.
But like I said, I've regressed. I've regressed since the Kiss reunion. I regressed, and I was only 22 then.
But it's cool because you go back and you could start rediscovering.
Yeah, and then I rediscovered almost like new records.
Yeah.
As an old dude, I'm hearing these 30-year-old records or whatever, 25-year-old, and they're new to me now.
Yeah.
And then you start going even more into that obscure 80s stuff. We did that.
Yeah,
one
we do that a lot. Yeah.
This 70s, what? Wow, cool.
Yeah.
We did. That wasn't radio. You knew about when you were a little kid. All you knew was mainstream. You're talking MTV, Nirvana. We didn't know.
It's funny,
we
like
didn't know when you were a little kid.
To piggyback on Dora's point, I think the reason why we do this and the reason why we love it is like we're all music fans. Like we're all music obsessed people.
Well,
like
obsessed
I'll
people,
I'll go back.
Music fans are music fans. We're obsessed.
I'll go back to like the 80s.
The music fan is the guy with the Affliction pants and show.
And find punk records, or I'll find 80s records. I'll find like noisecore records, death metal records. We're all always searching for that music. You know what I'm saying? Still. And I think like to Dora's point, like that being young in '91 with this death metal stuff, that's the start of your obsession with diving into really into music. That was my thing with like late '90s, like getting into obsession with diving into being obsessed with music. Then you get into hair metal stuff. In my 30s, I'm still looking into hair metal records, like 80s records, but I'm still trying to find everything. I find more older bands than I do new bands, because it's that journey.
I didn't even really like AC/DC that much when I was a little kid.
Right.
Back in the day, I was like, no, I like Motley Crue and Doc and Rat. I didn't care.
That's why I
was there and it was cool, but
that's why I always trump
in
like
my mid-20s, 26, 7. I remember I realized how great it is. I'm like, wow, what a dumbass I am.
That's why when I meet a 25-year-old kid or a 21-year-old kid that has it all figured out, I'm like, man, listen, like your journey's only beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
yeah, you can't be
just
like that.
Have it. You can't have it all figured out at that young age. You can't have it.
Like you were talking earlier about looking at the album cover and seeing it like.
It was the only option.
Yeah.
You didn't have YouTube.
And we spoke last time.
You couldn't look up.
I would look at the back of the thanks list, like we talked about last time.
Shirts, yeah.
And that's why I got one of my top 10 albums. I'll run them off here in a second, but my one top 10 album was Corrosion Conformity Blind. And I got it through a thanks list. And then when I looked at the back, when I was at Quonset and I looked at the back, that got me into trouble because
they think trouble.
No, he was wearing the shirt.
Oh, he's wearing a trouble shirt.
Yeah, and I was like, man, what is that? And so it got me into it, and that's kind of how things just kind of went down.
Go with a bullet, yeah, that's it.
But dude, when I heard, and there's a weird story about Blind. When I bought Blind from Quonset, it was sealed, and it still had that fucking dog bone on it that they would the sticker,
Yeah.
So I got home, I opened it up. It was the real, vacuum pack, take it off, take the dot, and I open it up, and I pull the booklet out. It was it wasn't like a normal book. It was a big, and there was fucking like math. Somebody had like a pen, and they did math all over it. I was like, what is this?
Like for real? It wasn't
it was like handwritten.
Handwritten?
And I was like, what the fuck is it? And I remember, I wish I would have kept it because I took it back to Quonset. And I showed the guy.
And now it would probably be like a thing sought after because somebody actually handled it.
Yeah, who the hell knows what it was? It was like,
This is
and I showed the guy.
Or vinyl?
The CD.
Okay.
The CD booklet. And I showed the guy, he was like, why did you write? And I was like, dude, that's not me.
I just opened it.
And he was like, I don't know, just go fucking grab another one, So I grabbed, and that album to me, and at that time I didn't know about the early COC stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was complete. This is the first album that really was totally, the first one with Pepper. Totally
well, that goes
different.
in that whole era, right?
So that to me was.
See, I have a complete opposite story with COC because I like the early stuff, and I thought that stuff is totally different. I didn't care for it.
It was a departure.
I don't hate it, but it's a departure and it's different.
Mm-hmm.
But our age difference. It makes all the difference.
What about now? Did you still feel the same way now, or would you?
I mean, I hear it when it pops up. Remember, weren't they even on a Metallica tour?
Yeah. On
Deliverance.
The Deliverance or Wise Blood, they toured with Metallica.
Yeah.
Right. That's big. And I'm glad they found a different way and got to finally be, because they were always just going to be an underground band.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
They always were.
Definitely.
But I always going to choose.
I can totally see why
That's
underground fans would hate that departure.
They played that one year in Maryland a few years ago with just the early lineup and all the old songs.
Oh, just it was the 3-piece?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was so cool.
Animosity said.
Right. Yeah, because that's the stuff I remember, and I know. I don't know them as
Eye for an eye.
other band. They gained like you said, they gained a whole new fan base, a whole new everything. It's different.
It was weird. I almost thought it was like I'm like, this can't be the same band, but there's no way.
That Blind wasn't totally that, but they were definitely going that way.
Mm-hmm.
I think Deliverance. I think Deliverance is more of a departure than it is. Yeah.
Dance of the Dead. It was.
I think Deliverance is their real. That's a real departure.
Animosity, COC, and that was on Headbangers Ball. We were like, wow, who's that guy? They had a new singer. We're like, wow, this is weird.
Who was only on that album?
Yeah,
Carl Agel.
Yeah,
and
Blind is a little.
But they were
bit of a,
they were going a whole different direction.
Yeah.
All right, they're changing the bands.
You got
we kind of just go ahead. Go ahead your list. Go ahead.
This is just kind of 10 that I threw. COC, Blind, Guns N' Roses, Use Your Illusion. I put 1 and 2 as 1.
Gotta be.
Bad Motorfinger, Soundgarden.
Awesome.
Monster Magnet, Spine of God.
Spine of God is. You always have a Monster Magnet record.
Every episode you put in Japanese punk, and I always got to
do a Monster Magnet. That's fair. That's fair.
Amazing album.
It's not as good as Death Side, a Bet on the Possibility, but I agree with you.
Sepultura, Arise, Pearl Jam 10, Morbid Angel, Blessed Are the Sick. Now, a lot of some of these Death albums, this was like years later. If you would have asked me, it would be all 80s like hard rock stuff, And so the more that I kind of got into different shit,
right?
Dismember, like an ever-flowing stream.
It's the best ever.
The first time Arnie, 25 years ago, I'm sitting at his house, and he lived in Alliance. He's like, "You ever listen to Dismember?" And
from the first riff, it's
never
perfect.
even heard of him. I'm 18 years old.
See, Arnie's my age, and he comes from the same world.
He pulls it out, puts it on, and everything with Arnie, he would just like look at me.
He wanted to see your reaction.
And as it was playing, he would do the, playing the drums, and he was like playing it, and it just got me into it, and I was like, holy shit.
I picked up Anthony Bielo from jail one time, one of many times. One of my best memories, picking up Anthony Bielo from jail, and I had like an Everflowing Stream on tape.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like he was I hope he's not mad for me bringing up the story. But he gets out of the Warrensville City County jail, and first thing I do is I put on that record, and we always had the Nuclear Blast tape because we should be Nuclear Blast street team people back then. And they sent us that tape when we were younger. So when we were in high school, like we had that. I never had like an Everflowing Stream on CD. Still don't. Always on tape. Nuclear Blast tape. It's still my favorite death metal band. It's perfect. There's nothing that's ever going to tell me that's not. It's the best. Go ahead. What's your next one? That's like
Devastation. Idolatry.
Awesome. Idolatry. Forgot about that. It's a fucking great album.
I like Signs of Life.
Idolatry is the best one.
Idolatry was just...
Idolatry is the best, yeah.
Souls of Sacrifice, again.
Hell yeah.
That's an art.
It's like the Arise. It's like that Arise style. It's like that Arise kind of style, though. I put Idolatry
style because of again, like I said, people, the Rise has that. It sounds like that Cancer record.
Yeah.
Which I'm not even a big fan.
That's a good point. I never thought about that. Yeah.
Idolatry. It has that sound because of Morrisound. That's it.
Yeah, sure. You're right.
They didn't go so far as to be like a Rise, but it definitely has that. The guitar sound, I could tell the compression.
Yeah,
it's the same.
Yeah,
it's
you're right.
Exactly the same.
It is. It does sound similar.
To me, it was like
a
Rise, where is it death? Is it thrash?
Right.
Is it like towed the line?
Absolutely.
It towed the line.
And so and it's like there was two people. My dad got me into a lot of shit, and Arnie was the other dude.
Yeah.
He was like a big brother that was just kind of go down to his place and God, listen to this. And he put on that Devastation, and when I heard the riff for Souls of Sacrifice, I was like.
Vocals are fucking great.
Oh my God, dude.
That great.
Right, and like I said, I got to know those guys later, Rodney later.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, he's a real dude. He's such a music fan, a real dude.
Mm-hmm.
He loves old shit. Like, he don't even care about that stuff anymore. I mean, I know he does somewhere, but he would never do it anymore. But he's always been that guy. I could just tell.
Yeah.
And now you look at it, his old Facebook stuff comes up. He saw like Ted Nugent and Sammy Hagar when he was
That's
like
awesome, man.
8 years old.
He's an old guy.
He cut school and hung out with Metallica for like 3 days.
It's crazy.
On Ride the Lightning, he's got pictures of them eating in a diner. He followed around and skipped Clue for a couple days. They did like 3 Texas shows, and he hung out with them. And then when they got real big, he still knew them.
You respect that in
Like,
retrospect.
I think it was Black Album or something, 91 era. He's backstage, they're like in some hallway in the back of a arena, and Kirk was Marshall shirt, and Kirk's like, they're making a face, and he's with Kirk, and they still remembered him from those years. Like, he did that. He cut school and hung out with Accept.
It's like it's almost like
the
people,
guy is for
it's
real
almost
as
like,
good ever can be.
For you to me, it's like him to you. It's like that generation.
And he's
like,
a couple years older than me too. So
yeah,
and he's still, like I said, now he's out helping out, Midnight, and he's good friends with Jamie.
that's cool, man. That's
he loves
really
being
cool.
out there, and he's got the money to go and do it, and go to those European festivals and do it. But I didn't know all that when I listened to Devastation. I just like, this is a really cool band.
Yeah,
And they were fucking awesome live. I saw them, Malevolent Creation first, 10 Commandments tour, opening for Devastation.
Which, by the way, 10 Commandments, 91. We got to talk about that. Yeah,
Idolatry tour, because that was their second record. I saw Devastation first record, Sepultura, Devastation, Faith or Fear.
damn.
Faith or Fear.
Faith, remember them?
Yeah.
It's not very good.
Jeez.
What was that, Punishment area?
Yeah.
But at Old Peabody, we were like, I don't care. I think we just didn't even watch them. We were looking at the t-shirts. And then we waited for Devastation. And then obviously Sepultura. Huge. We were like, oh my God.
Hell yeah.
Beneath the Remains, Signs of Life, then that. Then the Empire. It was Idolatry tour and 10 Commandments, Malevolent opening.
Dude.
I love 10 Commandments. We haven't talked about it. It's a great record. It's awesome. Yeah,
I was Malevolent
punishing.
back then.
It was so good. It was great.
Punishing.
Was it Alex Marquette? Was he on drums at that?
No, that was still that first guy.
Okay.
The first guy, whatever.
How was Pungent Stench? Because Been Caught Buttering is 91 too, and I gotta say that's one of my favorite death metal records of all time.
Good record, but when they came through it, I didn't know they were changing their image, and it was goofy, and we were like,
which I love.
Okay.
Club Mondo Bazaar.
I liked everybody. He was
Mondo.
acting like a weirdo on stage.
Yeah.
It became like a comedy act. We're like, what is going on?
It was a Dirty Rhymes and Psychotronic. I fucking worship those 2 albums.
But they were kind of goofy, yeah.
For God Your Soul from Your Flesh.
Right.
I love Ben Cott Buttering. Great shit.
Right.
But when I heard that Dirty Rhymes and I heard Club Mondo.
See, I don't really know.
Because I'm into a lot of stoner and doom.
Okay.
And that's where I started hearing those riffs.
When I heard Club Mondo, I was like, I would sound like Soundgarden to me mixed with death metal. I was like, this is like the best thing ever.
Because we were into For God Your Soul, and Think About It was still sounded like a death metal record.
Mm-hmm.
And there really wasn't much imagery inside the CD or the tape or whatever.
Yeah.
And then he toured with Incantation. And then we went, and we're like, just figured he was just going to be, and he's up there, like, making jokes and being goofy, and we were like...
Well, the one video...
We didn't know, and then they obviously went over and made their image kind of like that later. Yeah. I had we didn't know, we just didn't know. Again, the same with the Dark Throne thing, I didn't know. That's fine, but I didn't really follow it after that.
Well, the one video, they're wearing, like, puffy shirts, and he's got, like, a pink guitar, and he's going like this.
Right.
And I was kind of like, but the music, it just totally sucked me in.
Right.
So it's cool...
Yeah.
Sure.
Because you were kind of like
before that.
Yeah.
And then we,
it's a time and place thing, yeah, for sure.
Right. Again, generational. It is. It's just,
we
every year it seems like 2, 3, 4 years isn't a long time. Every year made a difference back then.
Mm-hmm.
Things moved so fast. Things would change so quick.
Mm-hmm.
Every year made it. I mean, if you were a year older than a dude in high school, you knew a lot more.
Yeah.
But how much were you?
There was so much.
But how much? Really, you were probably a really big Swerve Driver fan, and My Bloody Valentine. You were probably really into that stuff back then. That's a.
I don't even. What's
Do
Swerve
you know?
I don't even know what Swerve Driver is.
Do you know that I own Swerve Driver albums? I fucking
Oh fuck! I love
What's
Swervedriver.
I don't even know.
That's a shoegaze band. That was
it's
that's a big
shoegaze,
scene
but
for
it's
that.
like it's got more like guitar heavy influence into it.
Okay.
It's not metal at all.
Okay.
Psychedelic.
Yeah, it's just I like a lot of that stuff just from growing up. I like a lot of the psychic, which is why I love Monster Magnet and a lot of the stoner stuff.
Right, that's cool. I got into some of that over the years, but I didn't really.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't really
sounds
get into it. So
but Swervedriver, what is it? Raise? Is that the album that came out?
Yeah, Raise.
Yeah, Raise is. I just like shit that has like a lot of fuzzed out, heavy guitar.
It's funny that like it's like people like really it's the beginning I think of a lot of that like stonery kind of stuff in the 90s of really kind of an influence.
I think Caius Wretch came out in 91. I'm not a big fan of that album.
Yeah,
but it is. I mean, that's why a lot of people think that Monster Magnet was just Space Lord and that's it. And it's like
no.
Those dudes, like Dave Windorf was in Shrapnel, which was a kind of Ramones style punk band in New Jersey in the early 80s.
Okay.
I mean, he's like almost 70 years old now.
Yeah, he's old.
A lot of people don't know that.
Right.
And
he's an old guy.
That dude's been around for a long time. And Spine of God was... It's so different. Nothing sounds like that.
Yeah, Spine of God's really a different record. And also, My Bloody Valentine, people forget too, like, it's one of those bands from Europe where, like, people talk about Nevermind being a big record like that and was a big produced record, Butch Vig. My Bloody Valentine, Loveless, that the production of that record broke up that band.
Mm-hmm.
Like, after that, there's nothing else. It was a big produced record. You get bands kind of like having those sounds, like, where it's almost like those defining sounds and then they stop. And it's cool, like, and they influenced a lot of other stuff throughout the 90s and 2000s that would be bigger. Like, you wouldn't have, like, a lot of stoner stuff is bigger, influenced by that. Doom metal was influenced by that.
I still watched Headbangers Ball because it was still on at the time. But I would also watch 120 Minutes.
Yeah.
Which was more of, like, the 80s alternative stuff. And then Alternative Nation was, like, the newer stuff. And I watched all of it, and it was... crazy how a lot of that stuff just stuck with me over the years. Right. But I do want to mention real quick 3 major deaths in 91 as well. Freddie Mercury, Eric Carr, and then Dead.
That's right.
Mayhem.
Dead. Was that 91?
Dead's dead.
Yeah, Dead was dead.
Was that 91?
It was.
Really?
I forget that's not long ago. Yeah.
Wow.
Oh, that's crazy.
But yeah, it's been a great episode. It's been fantastic. This has been an awesome time.
We've done what, 90?
I think next we're gonna do 98.
98.
What'd you do?
98.
94 and what other year?
91, 94, 95, 93, 90.
It's 91, yeah.
97 or 99.
We haven't done 99, and now I think the next is gonna be 98.
Wow, 98. That's a weird one for me.
I got some queued up.
That's gonna be some of these, especially when we get into like the early 2000s and stuff.
2000s.
I know there's stuff there, but to think.
Yeah, then I have something in my head. This one I could really, because it was like the infancy of all this stuff, so it's really ingrained. And I still have, but 98, thinking like quick off the top of my head, okay. But I think that's when I started to go, I was sort of getting sick of the death metal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I really didn't like the black metal, so I was not really on that train either.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started getting into the melodic bands.
Mm-hmm.
European, of course. I've always going towards
Makes
European
sense.
bands, early or later eras, just because I don't like American band. We're talking Immolation, more Nation, of course, but
more exciting.
Now okay. So now I want and like I said, I sort of made fun of Carcass for not made fun, but they were just trying to those records they changed because they said they wanted to look we could play better now, so I want to make a better record or whatever. I want to show people. So that being a musician besides a fan, we were doing the same thing, and we were trying to play better and make more songs. stuff. So then all these bands were coming out.
That kind of help you understand their
At the
perspective a little bit better.
In Flames.
Does that kind of
all
help you
that
understand their perspective a little bit better?
Stuff. Sure.
Yeah.
Even though I still didn't like the records.
But
No, but then that whole new wave, all those bands, Dark Tranquility, all that stuff came, and I mean, at the gates really changed a lot of stuff for me.
Yeah.
Because it was like now you're going back. Now you're going back to the more the thrash instead of the death, which I loved too because I love the thrash riffing and I love a riff.
Would you want to do like an 89 or an 88?
I would do that.
Right, yeah.
I could focus more on the thrash because that's where my heart is.
89 would be great.
I could do that. You know.
Mm-hmm.
I could sit there and talk about that shit all day.
Oh, yeah.
Because, like I said, you say 90 off the top of my head. I'm like, yeah, but I could do some. I'd probably run out.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, dude,
the early stuff I can really go just because.
It was awesome. It was cool. It was a good time.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us on.
I'm the first guest, I guess. In the
brother. Good time.
The den of inebriation.
Kurnugia got any stuff before we go? Kurnugia got any stuff coming up you wanna promote?
We're just working on a new record right now. We got 6 or 7 songs. We want to have 10, so we got a couple more to go. We're playing the Blades of Steel Metal Fest in Milwaukee in September 28th, 29th, 30th weekend.
Check out Kurnugia if you like death metal.
You're also
you're a fucking poser if you don't
Maryland.
like Kurnugia.
And Maryland Death Fest next year.
That I will.
Is awesome.
It dismembers there. Why
finally.
you're not going? I don't.
I'll be there. That's like
it's jam packed. I mean, the lineup was jam packed last year too, and it was great.
Yeah, they said that they were like almost done announcing that, and then they came out with that thing that said, "Oh, there's more bands."
The only thing I'm committed to is White Claws and Hot Wings, but I will be there at that thing.
Yeah, they said this festival we're playing for a friend of ours named Randy in Milwaukee. You know, he's got Exciter and Cyclone.
Dude, Flots is on that.
Flots and Jetsam. I haven't seen them in years.
Have you heard the new stuff?
I haven't. I heard it was good.
Dude,
I have to listen to it.
I'm telling you, it's.
He's got Artillery. I love Artillery.
Nice.
Wow. You know, they did that little small tour a few years back, played at the Foundry. They were fucking awesome. They still got that same singer. The one guy passed away, one of the original guitar players, but they got a replacement. But those newer stuff they're doing kicks ass.
The one Artillery dude just died. He got hit by a bus.
Oh, another guy?
I mean, I guess we're.
But one of the guys died from health.
And on a fucking depressing note,
one
I mean,
of the
that's
guitar
like
players died from health problems. Just.
This guy wasn't original.
Okay.
This was like a newer guy, but he got.
Yeah, because there's some younger guys in the band.
It was just like a couple months ago.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
It was like, oh shit.
Yeah, one of the original guys died.
Yeah, it was Artillery. Yeah.
So.
German.
But.
Well, good.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I appreciate it.
It's all good.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Peace out.